NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with their proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email at contact@netsparker.com. Signal Sciences secures the most important web applications, APIs, and microservices of the world's leading companies, protecting over 7,500 applications and 150 billion production requests per week. Signal Sciences Next-Gen WAF and RASP help companies increase security and maintain site reliability without sacrificing velocity, all at the lowest total cost of ownership. Signal Sciences' patented technology protects any application against any attack with integrations into any DevOps toolchain. Signal Sciences, demand more from your WAF. Learn more at signalsciences.com/PSW. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. This is our technical segment with Javelin Networks, who's done many technical segments on the show, all equally as awesome. Great information that we'll get to in just a moment. However, I just want to remind everyone to check out the on-demand material that we have, securityweekly.com/on-demand. There's a lot of webcasts there now. We've been collecting them over the course of the year, and they are there in case you missed one. You can register and get information from both Security Weekly in collaboration with our sponsors. So please do that. Eyal Neemany is here with us. Welcome, Eyal.
Thank you, Paul. Glad to be here. How are you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic. So nice to have you on the show, and also congratulations on being acquired by Symantec. It's really awesome.
Thank you. Very excited to work for Symantec right now and bring all the stuff that we're presenting here on the show straight to the consumer through Symantec. And basically, I'm excited.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's great news. And you've got some awesome information. It's funny, Larry and I were talking before about how we know like just enough Windows to get by, deeper in some areas than others. We know like exploitation, basic, techniques, and but obviously there's Windows administrators and others in the security research community that just have an amazing amount of knowledge about Windows. So you are definitely one of those people, Eyal, and we want to hear more about some of the recent research topics.
Yes, sure. So let's get straight to it. So I'm about to talk about secure remote administration in Windows. I'll share the screen real quick. Let's go.
Everyone's holding their breath. Is it? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, look, it's Symantec branded slides and everything.
That was quick.
It's awesome.
Here we go. So in this deck, I will present two issues that are relevant to almost every organization, whether if they know it or not. So I think this time everyone watching this segment should go back and check these things on their environment to see whether if they're vulnerable or if they're capable of performing this stuff. So just quick reminder of myself. So I was a head of forensics and a security analyst in the Israeli Air Force. And just recently we got acquired. I work for Javelin as a senior security researcher. Right now we're acquired by Symantec. And also this is our team's last segment in Security Weekly, at least for this year, as far as I know. So I should have brought a cake or something.
Cake is good. We like cake.
Cake is a lie.
So, deep dive to the secure AD administration. So, I'll be discussing mainly about how to secure your RDP connection. And you can do that by either performing it with restricted admin mode and remote guard that we'll be discussing on. And also, I'll be talking about delegation and why you should never use unconstrained delegation in your environment. So, this is a very cool technique that SpectreOx has recently presented in DerbyCon. So I'll be showing a demo about how to perform that. So connecting to a remote machine. So the default scenario is that you'll be prompted to enter credentials for your login, or your credential will be forwarded to perform the remote desktop connection. So the steps are you'll be authenticated with your AD when you want to connect to a remote machine. You'll be receiving a ticket, and this ticket will be a TGS that you'll present it to your remote server. And sometimes when you're not using Kerberos, then you'll have to do something called NTLM challenge with your remote host. And sometimes you just need to retype your password, depends on what machine you're coming from. So there are different scenarios to connecting to a remote machine. And this one I'll talk specifically about AD connections and RDP protocols. So when initiating a new RDP session, the problem remains that your credentials that you're connecting with to the remote machine will be stored in the LSS process of the remote machine. So unless if you're logged off from the machine or rebooted it, then your credentials will always be there. They'll still be existent. Attackers can hijack them. Same thing as always. So just a reminder about credentials. So credentials are in Active Directory environments used in 3 forms. So you got the clear text password as a credential that you can just use it to re-authenticate and generate a new session. You got hashes. So in Active Directory, it's usually NT-hash or what we call NTLM hash. So it's basically your password encoded in UTF-16 with MD4 encryption. And it's just like the same thing as password. You can use it for re-authentication. Same thing as having a password. And the third one, which is the most important one that we'll be discussing on, is a Kerberos ticket. So a Kerberos ticket is a token received from your Active Directory domain controller. And it got its own expiration date that indicates when your ticket will expire and you won't be able to use it. And also, the ticket indicates your identity inside your Active Directory. And there are 2 types of tickets, as you can see here. There's the TGT and TGS ticket. When TGS, the S is for service, is only valid for specific services. But if you have a TGT ticket, it's basically mean you can access all the services. It means that you just like having the password of that identity.
And TGT is your ticket granting ticket, right? Which is standard Kerberos.
Ticket,
yeah,
exactly.
Right.
So basically, the ticket granted ticket, the TGT, is just like the same as having a password in some meaning, but you do have some limitations and you have the expiration for it. So also a reminder, any credential stored in the memory can be stolen somehow by attackers. This is a fact. So jump servers. I also recently discussed how jump servers addresses this issue on my previous tech segment. So jump servers claims to solve this problem, but however, it's proved that in many scenarios, credentials are still exposed in the destination memory using these solutions. So for example, when using jump servers, you're actually connecting to a remote server via RDP, and you won't log in directly to the remote server. Instead, you will be forwarded to a more secured jump server from which you will open a new RDP inside the jump server session into your initial target remote server. So in the end, like you have an RDP session inside an RDP session. So you're jumping from one RDP session to another one. This is like how they secure you. So as a result, this type of trick is making sure that your managed credential won't be exposed on your source end workstation. But the fact remains that your credentials will still be exposed on the destination server, which is the server that you're connecting to. So this is the main problem about jump servers. This is the one thing that it don't solve.
Eyal, why did people in that jump server? That's not like a vendor product or some kind of product. That's really just like another RDP, basically a server specifically, so you can RDP into that server and then RDP into other servers from there. Correct?
Yes, I'm not talking about specific vendor or product. This is jump server, just a term that many uses, but it does being offered as a product in by
If
many
I
vendors.
if I may if I may interrupt, and I might actually have a question in here somewhere. Um, as a use case, Paul, a jump server very commonly seen in the PCI world, where you've created a supposedly isolated card data environment, but you still have administrators that need to do stuff within the environment, but they also have to do stuff outside of the environment on the rest of the network. So a fairly common um, implementation is to put in a jump server, and then you isolate the access into the card data environment through the jump server, and then admin users and whoever needs to do stuff on the inside, rather than having to maintain a bunch of different workstations or wherever they're coming from, whether it's on site or remotely. You just isolate the access to the jump server with firewall rules and access control lists and things like that. So if there's a question in here, could you explain again what I heard you say is the risk is on the destination through the jump server? That's where the credentials persist?
Exactly.
Okay.
The jump server itself, it's secured, as you was saying. There are many layers of defense on it, just like
Right.
firewalls and hardening. But eventually, you're connecting to a remote machine where your credential will be exposed there.
Mm.
So that's the main problem. So Microsoft has also tried to address this issue by issuing an alternative to secure remote credentials when connecting through RDP. So the first alternative is called restricted admin mode. So it's supported by Windows 8.1 and above. And what you're seeing here is that Microsoft is actually, when you're applying the restricted admin RDP mode, when you're connecting to the remote server, you won't send your credentials of your user to the remote machine. And what actually happens under the hood is that the target endpoint will contain a session that doesn't include your user's ticket granting ticket or any related TGS, hashes, or password. Instead, what will happen, you'll just need to authenticate to your DC to say, hey, I got privileges to access this remote machine. But you won't actually create a new session of yourself, of the admin inside the machine. Instead, what will happen is that you will hold the target computer account TGT and TGSs. So actually, you open a session which you're not yourself. You're having the privileges of the remote machine. So you don't possess your user information inside the machine. So you have a new session that is not the user that you're connecting with. So as you can see, when you're connecting through RDP restricted admin mode, if you type "who am I," you actually see that you're the system user instead of just being the my admin user, just like here. And if you try to fetch all the credentials from the memory, you'll see that you receive the tickets of the machine itself and not the user that authenticated to the machine too. So there is one limitation which is very crucial about this feature, and that this feature denies any single sign-on features. So the user connecting to a remote machine will be contained inside a remote desktop session. So sometimes you want that, but mainly if you want to perform another activities inside a domain, it's not enough. So this is quite different comparing to the current jump server solution, because in this case, the credentials will not be exposed in the target endpoint, but in the source endpoint that you're authenticating with, you'll be exposing your credentials. And this is also not a convenient solution at all. You can't really do anything but accessing the actual remote machine for local activity. So you're just authenticating with your user to that remote machine, but you're actually contained inside the remote machine.
Now, Eyal,
so it's only useful for a limited amount of use cases.
But that sounds secure, though, or at least more secure at the surface.
So yes, it does more secure, but the main problem here is that you won't be able to perform any other activities but connecting to the machine. So it's just like logging in with a local administrator account through that remote machine.
Is it a similar level of privilege, that local system account versus the local administrator account?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes, but you don't have any like additional domain privileges.
I
So
gotcha, yeah.
it's useful in some cases if you just want to access the machine remotely and that's it. If you don't want to perform or install any other stuff, but in many other use cases, which that's why the next feature was that I'll present was invented. That it's not helpful, and that's why like many other administrators won't use it. That's why no one used it. So there comes the new generation of the restricted admin mode, and it's called Remote Credentials Guard. So it's only supported by Windows 10 and above. This is like the main limitation. If you want to perform that, if you want to connect using Remote Credential Guard, you'll have to both sides, the client and the server that you're connecting to and from, gotta be Windows 10 1607 build and above. So basically, the features here are amazing as far as I think. When you're connecting through the RDP remote credential guards, you're actually getting the following security perks. First of all, you're not using NTLM. Everything that you'll be performing with LTLM will just be denied. So also another huge feature that you're bringing here is the encryption of the credentials in the memory. So they're actually mitigating past the hash, because the hash of the user will be delivered to the remote system, but it will be encrypted inside a memory. Another thing is, from now on, the ticket granting tickets, they'll not be exposed for the entire time. I will discuss on this later. And also it denies basically all types of credential theft scenarios from the memory, such as token stealing and terminal server hijacking, after the session has been disconnected. So you don't have to sign off or restart the machine in order to get your credentials clean from the machine. It's being done automatically. And also, this is something that became very trendy after the recent credential guard features have been introduced, the MEM-SSP injection. This is a feature used by Mimikatz in order to mimic a security authentication technique to the machine. So actually, it's just like doing key logging for authentication. So it's like impersonating an authentication driver, and it just logs the entire credentials to a file, so attackers can grab it later. So this also doesn't work as well. And I think the main thing here is that you have no hardware requirement for this thing to work. So one big issue with that is that you can, as an attacker, you can disable this feature. So you can just disable it and make sure that no one will connect to the machine using the remote credential guard. But Windows will, if like IT administrator will want to use that feature, then it just like tell them, hey, it's disabled on this machine. Are you sure you want to log in? So mainly it's very secure, and I'll talk about it right now. So let's show you guys a demo. Actually, what I'll do is I'll try to log in using Credential Guard, and then we'll try to steal all these credentials from the memory and see how it works. So from a Windows 10 machine, I'm connecting as my admin, which is a member of the domain admin group. Perform the reconnaissance to verify that it's a member of the domain admin. And now I'll initiate a RDP session using the remote guard parameter. So as you can see, my credentials are being automatically forwarded. I don't need to retype anything. So what actually happens here is that I just connected to the machine. There's nothing that I had to retype or something like that. Actually, my ticket granting ticket is being automatically transferred to the new machine, but it's actually not stored entirely in the remote machine. It's actually being taken from my source endpoint. So it doesn't reside on the LSAS memory right now. actually just like fetching the ticket granting ticket from my source machine. As you can see, I can perform anything. I just try to access the DC using the dir command, and as you can see, I managed to do so. So I'm capable to perform anything. I'm not limited like restricted admin. I can perform anything, but in a much more secure way. So here we go. I got a TGS ticket using a legitimate activity when connecting through credentials, remote credentials card. So here we go. This is like also one huge improvement. So I'm disconnecting. I'm not signing out. I'm not rebooting the machine. And now I'll try to steal credentials from that machine using another session. We'll see how it goes. So here I'm the attacker. So I'm on the remote machine that the admin was disconnected. And performing reconnaissance, I'll make sure that I'm not a member of any group. So I can do that without any permissions at all. And I'm going to perform any type of credential theft known today. Punchy Mimikatz. And the first thing I want to do as an attacker is, of course, trying to dump all the hashes from the memory. So I'm doing that while using the logon password command. So scrolling up, I'll try to find some interesting credentials. And this one, for example, is mine, is the user that I'm connected to the RDP session with. So I'm connected through normal session. So as you can see, I managed to find the hash of it. But right now, while scrolling down, I'm trying to find the admin session. As you can see, there's weird stuff going on here. So the entire thing is encrypted. So I can't steal the hash of that user. It's completely secured and it's encrypted. So I can't perform the well-known pass the hash technique. This feature alone is a huge improvement than everything that we saw from Microsoft so far. I'm completely limited and unable to dump the hash. So the next thing that I'll want to do...
Yeah, I just keep waiting for the part where you tell us how to bypass that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay. Keeping us in suspense.
Well, while you're scrolling, do you know what type of encryption they're using to encrypt the hashes?
Actually, no, I haven't digged out that far for that.
Okay.
So the next thing I want to do is to dump all the tickets from the memory. That's like the next thing I'll try to do. Like I've seen before, when I'm connecting to the machine, I could have seen the ticket granting ticket of the admin, but right now I'll try to steal it and see how it goes. So I dumped all the tickets, and I'm able to see the TGT ticket of the admin. And right now what I'm trying to do is load it. So I'm using the Kerberos PTT command and loading the TGT ticket. And right now what I'm doing is I'm opening a new shell with the loaded ticket. So running klist, I can see it loaded. As in a normal scenario, I'm trying to access the DC. I'm supposed to have access, but it's being blocked. So not everything is lost. So there's one limitation for this feature. You can still you'll be able to steal the tickets, the service tickets, if there are any. So that's the one limitation that attackers can still bypass this stuff. So right now, what I'll try to do is load the service ticket. So this is the CEF service. So right now, I'll try to do is access the DC again. And there is access. So I'm not completely contained. This is the one barrier that they haven't figured out how to solve. So as you can see, I'm able to access it with the stolen ticket. So TGS still works. TGS stealing. And now this is like the one feature that amazed me the most. So I've also discussed on the show about RDP hijacking. So what it actually means is that if there's any RDP session that open but haven't completely, like the user haven't signed off, as an attacker, I can just like hijack the process, the session itself, if I have system privileges, and I just can take over the session. So right now I'm typing the TS sessions to figure out what's the connected sessions. And I can identify that session 2 is the my admin session. So in normal scenarios, I'm just can hijack it using the TS remote command. Yeah, I'll change it to. So what happens is I really hijack the session, but Microsoft forces me to retype the password. So once I first saw that, I was impressed. Mm-hmm. Like that they managed to do real hardening using this feature. So this is how also it looks like when I'm trying to what I talked about, the MMSSP feature that you can just like mimic an authentication driver to to keylog all of the authentication attempts. As you can see here, I was supposed to see the password, but actually I received null results out of it. So also conclusion, this might be better than jump servers when talking about AD security. So why would you use a complicated jump server when you have a better, more secure alternative at no cost? So also, like, I was asking myself, why doesn't like the jump servers don't force this feature to be applied on any connection? I mean, you're already connected through a secure jump server. You can just make it, you can force the remote guard feature. So there's two limitations that I found out. One of them, which is very bizarre, when I was testing this, I was actually performing connection of RDP inside RDP. So I connected from a laptop to an like endpoint inside the environment. And then from there, I tried to perform all these tests. So remote guard doesn't work if you're performing an RDP inside an RDP, and that's what jump servers does. Mm-hmm. So actually, what I was getting like wrong username and password, and I was like, I had no idea what to do from there. Like there was no like relevant error at all. So there are some limitations for that when you're using an RDP inside an RDP. So this is one limitation. Also, they can force it, like they can force the policy of your AD to enable this feature because it's related to like registry settings and stuff like that and GPO configurations. So they can't really force the endpoints to use remote guard. And also they can't force the fact if you don't use Windows 10 and above, then it won't support it. So what attackers can do. So as I mentioned earlier, so TGS stealing does work. You can steal the cache TGS tickets with no problems and then reuse them in order to gain access to additional resources in the domain. Another thing that they can do is steal the TGT ticket, the ticket granting ticket. They can steal hijack sessions or tokens, but only if the RDP session is alive. So, for example, in this demo, I've disconnected from the session. But if I was like on real time typing stuff and just live on the machine, I was able probably to steal any token from that machine, from the connected user, and take over the credentials. And same goes for the TGT. So if the session is live, then you'll still be able to perform all of the casual stuff, except for pass the hash, which is completely secured and encrypted. And also, one limitation is that they can disable it, and just eventually someone will try to connect to the machine without it. And another thing is that they can steal, also attackers can steal other credentials, just like credentials from the Windows Vault and many other sources, which are not cache credentials, but they are Windows credentials. So you can use Kerberoasting and many more attacks. But when talking about remote machines, then only these type of things would work. TGS stealing and stealing cache credentials in real time. So on to the next subject. Any questions so far?
So
No.
similar, I know one of the protections against Mimikatz, there's like a registry key change that you can make, but that's also pretty easily reversible by the attacker, correct?
Yes, correct. So you're talking about LSA protection, and yes, attackers can just disable it with just registry keychain. So it doesn't. There's no protection at all.
Gotcha.
It's protection,
So
but only if you're an idiot.
unconstrained delegation. So the second subject I will be presenting is how flawed the unconstrained delegation feature is, and why you should disable it right now. So this is how it looks like. This is me just reviewing an object inside the domain. When you're right-clicking in a domain object, which is a computer, and then you're going to the delegation tab, you've probably seen these things and just had no idea what it means. So actually, this feature is mainly used when someone wants to configure an application servers that delegates credentials from someone accessing the application, such as like SQL servers, web servers. So you're just like want to act as behalf of yourself, but inside that application area. So if it's not configured correctly, bad stuff can happen. So this is a feature that was well known for a while as bad for whoever used it in their Active Directory network. So actually, when you're enabling it, so any object in the AD can be configured with it. It can be either a computer or a user. And there are two types of configuration in this matter. And it's called constrained delegation and unconstrained delegation. So constrained delegations are actually the more secure types. What they actually do is that they limit the delegation to only specific services and protocols. So, for example, you will be able to delegate your credentials only for example, for MySQL services, for database access, or it can be another thing just for like you can delegate your credentials when accessing to this machine only for web services like IIS and more. So actually what you do is that when you're connecting to any machine, you'll be acting as behalf of another user. You'll be delegating your credentials into that machine. So the much less secure feature is called unconstrained delegation and should be avoided because what it actually means is that when you're using it, you're exposing your credential entirely when connecting to that machine. So this is let's do a recap because this topic is very complicated, but once you understand it, then you just can see it clearly what the problems are. So this is how normally you'll be granted access to a server using Kerberos. So first of all, you will initiate authentication to the domain controller, and you will receive a ticket granting ticket from the DC. This is steps 1 and 2. And 3 and 4, you'll be also requesting, you'll be presenting the TGT to the DC to say, hey, I'm the user workstation here, and I will receive a service ticket, which is called a TGS. So the next step, if I want to access a remote machine, I'll have to present it a TGS. And then it'll say, okay, the access is valid, you'll be granted with the access. So when using unconstrained delegation, this has become odd because the TGS that you're receiving from the DC, this is step 4, actually contains your own credentials. It contains the ticket granting ticket. So you have a TGS that you will be presenting in step 5 to the application server that will contain your credentials. So you're actually giving away your credentials to anyone with unconstrained delegation option enabled that you're connecting to. So for example, if I want to access any other machine in the network, for example, I'll just like typing the dir command, same as I did before. And for example, I want to access a IIS server. So I'll performing the dir command I'll go to the C $ share. What I'll do is not just presenting my own ticket, the TGS ticket for access. I'll also be giving away, I'm delegating my credentials to that remote machine. And at steps 6 and 5, you can see that right now, whoever on that remote machine, the application server, will be able to reuse my credentials to do whatever they want on the network. And this is how flawed this feature is. So technically, unconstrained delegation, presenting a TGS to a trusted for unconstrained delegation computers that will include my TGT as well. So TGT, ticket running ticket, your credentials, so it's just like having a hash or a password, but with like minor limitations. Same as
Eyal,
before.
what's the use case for the application server to present my TGS to the domain controller? I'm assuming there's legitimate use cases for that.
So presenting the TGS for the domain controller, actually no, because if you're already on the machine, the service that you have stolen, that you just received, is actually a service to access only you, like to access itself. So there's no use case for that particular thing. There's one more use case when the service, there's something called in Microsoft SPN, service principal names for services. So sometimes they have like a general name for the SPN, for the service. So instead of like saying, okay, just HTTP, I want just HTTP from the server, there's like a big group of services that include in one name, and it's called host. So the only use case that you can do is unintentionally requesting like the group name of the services. So you're just like you just want to access a HTTP server, but eventually, if someone would hack that, will grab that ticket from the memory, you'll also be able to access other resources. But again, you're also contained like the ticket is. The target server of this ticket is yourself, it's itself. So it doesn't really make any sense to do that. But in cases just like delegation, it does make sense. And that's like the only cases when it will. Because you can act behalf of another user when you're having these TGS.
Gotcha.
So also, again, when we're stealing a TGS that has unconstrained delegation access with it, it will include the ticket granting ticket. So the use case, the one huge use case here is, what if you could force any high privileged computers or services or users to interact with your computer, request any service from your computer, and then force them to present their TGT by doing so. So this one was presented by the SpectreOps team. It's called the printer bug. So the printer service is turned on and enabled by default. So using a function called RPC remote find first printer change notification, which is as far as I understood, it's just like saying, hey, your printer is ready. You can just register to me. I'm a printer. You can force the printer service to present you his TGS, including the TGT in this case, because you have unconstrained delegation. So what you can actually do is force the domain controller of your domain to think that you're a printer, that you're ready to be deployed, and you can force the DC $ account to present you a TGS that will contain his TGT. So that's because that local services are running under the domain computer account privileges. So, for example, for any computer inside a domain, if there's any service that is running under a system or under network access or just local accounts, their hash, their password will be the computer account password. And the computer account password of the DC is very, very sensitive. So you will be receiving the TGT of the computer account of the DC. So again, you're saying to the DC, hey, I'm a printer, authenticate through me, and it will present you the credentials. Okay, so attackers can utilize the domain controller account TGT to impersonate to the DC after that, and then what they can do is to perform replication through the DC sync attack and access the anti-DS database, which eventually what it means is just dump, you can use the TGT of the DC, dump the KRB TGT, the main account ticket, and the hash, and then you'll be able to create a golden ticket. And I'll be just showing you that right now.
So, Eyal, if I pretend to be a printer, I can communicate with the domain controller, and as a result of that, it sends me the domain controller's TGT?
Exactly.
Wow. Why would they do that?
So that's basically mean if you're compromise the machine with unconstrained delegation.
Yeah.
Usually these machines, they're application servers, or they're probably vulnerable to some kind of vulnerabilities, like well-known vulnerabilities on the internet. So sometimes they're actually the initial foothold inside the compromised environment in many times, because often they're also exposed, straight from to the internet. So in many use cases that pen testers have encountered, actually there was like the initial foothold inside the domain. But in other cases, you can just you can hop from somehow like gain foothold inside this unconstrained delegation server. So assuming that I am on an unconstrained delegation server right now, what I'll do, here we go. So this is my machine. This is my username. As you can see, I'm not an privileged user. I'm just a member of the domain users. Also, for this attack, actually, you don't have to use even local administrator privileges. You can do that as like guest user. You don't need anything. So first of all, what I just performed here, I just tried to fetch all of the unconstrained delegation servers from the Active Directory to verify whether I have this option turned on. And as you can see, performing this recon command, it returns that this computer that I'm on is vulnerable by the unconstrained delegation attack. So the next step will be finding the domain controller that I will be tricking. So I'm taking the name of this DC. And I'm running the spool sample tool, which is what was released recently, to act as a domain as a printer, and notify the domain controller that the W7 test Eyal machine got the printer ready for them. So right now, my next move will be running Mimikatz. Actually, it's not necessary to run Mimikatz. There's other techniques to dump tickets, but in this particular demo, I'll be showing you how to do it with Mimikatz. So I'm just like always, I'm dumping credentials, and I will do that with dumping the tickets from the memory. And as you can see, among the tickets, there's the AIG DC KRB TGT account ticket. So I will use that. I will load that into Mimikatz. Using the PDT command. And I will try to perform the DC sync command. As you can see, I'm impersonating the ticket of the AIG DC 101. So I'll perform DC sync, and I will fetch the hash of the main domain account. It's called the KRB TGT. And with this hash, I can actually create any other tickets that I want in the domain, and in particular a golden ticket. So as you can see, I'm able to gain access to the NTDS. I've dumped all of this credential of the KRBTGT account, and from here I just compromise the domain through by pretending that I'm a printer.
That's crazy. So all DC sync is for like domain synchronization, right? To replicate domains to other machines. Is that correct?
Yes. So when I'm receiving the ticket of the DC, then I can just use that and pretend that I'm a DC and perform the replication.
So all I need to impersonate a domain controller to get the DC sync function to work is I need the domain controller's TGT.
Yes. Exactly.
That's crazy. It sounds like Microsoft really didn't put a whole lot of constraints around domain synchronization or domain replication.
Yes, it does. Actually, like the only limitation is just like an ACL. Like same as always, the security settings in Microsoft is based on access list.
Yeah.
So yeah, just DC's accounts, they have them, of course, they're not by default. Like the one thing that I don't understand is why there's no type of limitation to perform the DC sync, the replication, domain replication from an actual machine. Like when we're talking about connection-wise, like IPs of actual machine of the domain controller, like they can limit that through traffic and not like necessarily through domain out objects.
Right.
Like there are many other barriers that they could have done, but they're not. I guess they're saving this type of defenses to Microsoft Azure cloud or something like that.
Interesting.
All right, so mitigation. This is actually very easy to mitigate. You can disable the printer spooler service in all DCs and sensitive servers. Sometimes actually organization does use the printer spooler service in DCs. Like this is sometimes they do that. So there are other options. You can add all of your sensitive accounts to a group called protected users. That will mean that they will be restricted to use only hardened security settings, and this kind of attack won't work. You can also tag these users with account is sensitive and cannot be delegated option. And also you can just restrict NTLM and deny many type of attacks. All right, so these are the phases of the attack. So first of all, I'm performing recon to query all of the unconstrained delegation servers. Then I'll be gaining access to the unconstrained delegation server, performing lateral movement to it. And then I'll trick the DC to access myself, the unconstrained delegation server, and it will present me the TGT of it. And eventually, I'll be performing DC sync and grab the KRB TGT user hash. So if you're using, for example, Javelin AD Protect, or right now, as it's called, Symantec Endpoint Threat Protection for Active Directory.
Wow.
Then you could have detected that in all these 3 steps. Yeah, I know that's a long name.
That's a long name.
That's definitely a long name. We call it SETDAD.
I was just going to say, what's the acronym for that? SEPDAD.
SETDAD.
Sounds like it's a
pill.
pill.
Okay, I think I misspelled it. I think it's Symantec Endpoint Threat Defense for Active Directory.
Oh, okay.
I'm already big difference. Yeah, I'm already confused.
It's all right. That's cool though.
SEPDAD. Is that like a pill you can take? It's little.
SETDAD. Yeah, I think SETDAD is much more catchy.
Parallelogram. It's blue. Never mind.
I know not what you're referring to, Larry. I couldn't even fake knowing what you were referring to just then. Sorry.
Viagra.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, I've taken those. Wait, what?
What? It's interesting, Eyal. It seems like there's no end to discovering these little nuggets, tidbits of information in Active Directory.
Exactly.
Features.
Yeah, I think as the time goes, we'll find out much more, many more services and old functions that no one remembered that exist, which are extremely vulnerable. For example, for this printer bug, what Spectre Ops mentioned is that they reached Microsoft for that, but they claim this is a feature. So,
Of course they did.
Yeah, what can you do? So it's probably going to be like that all the time. You're going to find something, they're going to claim it's a feature,
And then they'll have some protection feature in Windows 12. Is that what do they call? What's after Windows 10? It's
going to be Windows 10 forever.
That's it. It's just Windows 10.
Yeah, Windows 10, just a different build. Yeah, but that's why we're here for.
That's right. Well, that's awesome, Eyal. Thank you so much. That was great information. That was really, again, very scary.
Yay, Windows!
Yay, Windows. That's awesome. Eyal, thank you so much for appearing on Paul Security Weekly.
Sure. Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Take care. And with that, take a short break. Come back with the security news for this week. Stay tuned.